Hello, podcast fam. I am thrilled to share some exciting news. My book, So Grow Lead, is officially live on Amazon. This book is more than just my story of starting a nonprofit and building a peanut butter factory in Malawi. So trust me, the ups and downs of that journey are worth the read. It's also packed with practical strategies to help nonprofit leaders like you tackle challenges with clarity, courage, and a whole lot of heart. If you've ever wondered how to turn your vision into reality, navigate the inevitable hurdles, and build something meaningful, whether in your organization or in your own life, this book is for you. I'd be so grateful for your support in spreading the word. Grab your copy of So Grow Lead in the show notes and on Amazon today. Let's keep sowing seeds of impact together. Welcome to the Lead with Heart podcast, which is dedicated to nonprofit leaders who are passionate about making a difference. I'm your host, Haley Cooper, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on a journey of growth, inspiration, and transformation. At Lead with Heart, we believe that leading with heart means embracing empathy, compassion, and authenticity in every aspect of our work. It's about putting people first, fostering genuine connections, and creating a positive impact that goes beyond numbers and metrics. In the nonprofit world, it can often feel like we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. The challenges are immense, and the road can be lonely. But here, you're not alone. This podcast is a community where we support each other, share our stories, and learn together. Each episode will dive into personal and professional development topics tailored specifically for nonprofit leaders. From innovative fundraising strategies and effective team management to self-care practices and leadership insights, we're here to provide you with practical strategies that you can apply to your life and work. My goal is to empower you, elevate your leadership, and engage your heart in all that you do. I want to help you navigate the unique challenges of the nonprofit sector with confidence and resilience, so you can continue to create meaningful change in the world. So whether you're driving to a meeting, taking a break, or winding down for the day, tune in and join us on this journey. Together we'll discover what it truly means to lead with heart. Thank you for being here. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Lead with Heart podcast. This is your host, Haley Cooper. And today we're diving deep into the world of philanthropy, leadership, and what it really takes to drive change that matters. Our guest is Ben Williamson, and he is the Director of Recruitment and Ambitious Impact, calling all the way from London. And I'm here in Orange County. So it's very exciting to be able to talk to Ben today. He, like I said, is the Director of Recruitment at Ambitious Impact, also known as AIM, a dynamic organization reshaping how we identify and support the next generation of nonprofit leaders. Ben brings a refreshingly honest and insightful perspective to the table, from hard-earned lessons of shutting down a charity that wasn't delivering results to spotting the unexpected qualities that make founders thrive. He is passionate about helping people move from good intentions to real-world impact. I am excited for this conversation. Welcome to the podcast, Ben.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I would love to know a little bit more about your backstory and your background. Is there a pivotal moment in your life where you knew that you wanted to be in the world of social impact?
I think this is, with a little cliche, something that I was always interested in, but in different ways. As a teenager, I remember having dreams or aspirations of, I think at that time, particularly being a journalist and reporting on the ways in which there were challenges in the world, but also solutions and things that people were doing to fix these. And through my university degree and various different jobs out the other side of this, I got a lot of exposure to the many different ways in which you might approach trying to have a positive influence on the world. And I really learned that I wanted to be more of a doer than a reporter. I wanted to really be involved in the details of what it is to launch things, build things, produce work that really makes a difference in people's lives. And I think there's maybe not a specific point where that came to pass. I think with COVID in part, maybe there was a period of time where it felt a little like the world paused and there was more time for exploration or consideration of different avenues. And I got very excited about the idea of trying to start my own project. This initially was, I think the first business that I ran was a little health food startup in my local town, just selling products that we made in our kitchen, going to the market on a Saturday, something that I think a lot of people have exposure to or experience with. And through that, I really enjoyed the process of that, of building a product and trying to produce something that hopefully was valuable to people. And then got excited about the idea of what it would look like to do that in a way that reaches a lot more people. And maybe the progression of my career since then has been trying to build things that can really reach a lot of people in a way that really helps.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I can relate to loving to build things. That is a passion of mine. Is there a specific area of social impact that you are passionate about?
Yeah, a lot of my work in the last few years has focused on international development, providing services and aid to people who live in poorer countries. I find myself very motivated by the simple fact or lack of luck in how and where people might be born. That there is no control that I have or anyone has over where exactly I ended up being born as someone who was born in London in the UK and had access to quite substantial opportunities through that in a global picture of what it looks like to be a human being. And many people just through that sheer chance of birth don't have nearly the same opportunities and have all sorts of challenges. And that basic injustice in some ways in what people's opportunities are, the way in which they can really live a life that they enjoy, that they find value in, that they can really experience to the fullest, is something that really motivates me about international development in the broadest sense, in trying to narrow this gap to redistribute a little bit the benefits that we might have living in wealthier countries to those who are in more need and often where the same amount of work or the same amount of money can go a lot further.
Yeah, definitely. I just had Elaine Linkford on the podcast, and she runs an organization called She Steps Forward International, and they help with small business development, mainly in Kenya, I believe, but they've seen the transformation of just some seed money being able to empower women who have the skills and the business sense to really uplift their community. And it's just beautiful to hear those stories. And when you're talking about building, is there a specific aspect that you love when it comes to starting projects?
I think the open space. I've heard it described that some people are like blank page people, where others like more of a written book to follow. And I am very much a blank page person. I like the openness and the potential for creativity in having a big problem that I want to try and solve, and there being many different potential paths to solving that problem, and trying to really figure out which of these different ideas that I have, which of these different approaches that other people might have taken is really the most effective or the most worthwhile for me to try and really invest in.
I love that. I've never heard it like that. A lot of our listeners are CEOs and founders, and you are a founder of a nonprofit. So can you talk a little bit more about your journey to starting a nonprofit and what that looked like?
Absolutely. My current role now is at Ambitious Impact, and the main program that we run is this Charity Entrepreneurship incubation program, which is a incubator for charities. People might be familiar with Y Combinator as an incubator for-profit organizations. Ultimately, we provide the training and mentorship and a bit of seed funding to get new organizations off the ground. I first got involved in this whole area, in this community, by being a participant on this program. First time I applied, I got rejected. The second time I applied, they let me onto the program. Through this, I found a co-founder and I found a problem to work on. Myself and Sarah, my co-founder, set out to set up an organization that was increasing access to family planning, contraception, access, particularly in West Africa. And that's about the scope we had to begin with. The program and organization that we provide a research report, synthesize the work of other organizations. If there are experts in the space, try and bring together resources or guidance on what avenues might be particularly promising. But it's down to our founders when they go and start their new organizations to figure out that problem, to have that blank page and figure out the approach that they can take. Myself and Sarah, this is in 2022, launched this organization called the Maternal Health Initiative. And so we began really with this blank page, trying to figure out very basic questions of what are the different types of programming that might be most useful in increasing access and information around contraception, and what approaches might be most effective, what approaches are the cheapest. So if it's cheaper, we can just go and reach more people. And why is this a problem in the first place? And really trying to ask those basic questions, even just where should we work? There are lots of countries where this might be an issue, but are there countries where there is a particular need or where there is less work being done? And therefore, if we come in and provide a service, it's going to go further in helping a community or a region or whoever might be the beneficiary.
Imagine a fundraising partner that not only helps you raise more money, but also supports you in retaining your donors. A partner that helps you raise funds both online and on location so you can grow your impact faster. That's DonorBox, a comprehensive suite of tools, services, and resources that give fundraisers just like you a custom solution to tackle your unique challenges, helping you achieve the growth and sustainability your organization needs, helping you help others. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And so obviously going into a different community, I just wrote a book last year and talked on this podcast a lot about my own journey of starting a nonprofit in Malawi, Africa, a peanut butter factory, and navigating the cultural differences when it comes to family planning. The hospital that we were based out of actually had a pretty robust family planning program, but obviously there's taboos that come with some of these topics. And so how did you navigate getting this programming into West Africa?
Yeah, this is a great question, and is something I think we try to do a lot of work on, and you continually learn. And I'm sure this was maybe something you experienced as well, is as you embed yourself more in a community, as you spend more time trying to learn and trying to deliver programming, you discover new insights all the time in ways in which you might be bringing in knowledge that doesn't quite apply or not quite understanding the ways in which something works in this particular space. We began, I think, just with a higher level. Let's look at the national data about why there might be a problem in this place. So why aren't women particularly accessing contraception, or why is knowledge of different contraceptive options very low? And then we were particularly focused on the postpartum period. So this period after giving birth, where a mother might be in danger or be prone to having a second pregnancy. And so there are reasons why two pregnancies very close back to back, outside of the practical considerations for purely health reasons, is quite dangerous, both for the mother and for the child. And so this is a point of time in which it can be particularly valuable to make sure that should women wish to, they have access to information around contraceptive methods, around family planning. And so work goes on within the healthcare service. And I think one of the first things that was important for us is really understanding what the actual experience of women was like. So where can they access methods? What kind of information are they receiving? And what's the larger cultural sphere around contraceptive access? So one thing, we primarily worked in Ghana. And so one thing, particularly in the north of Ghana, is you have just a much more paternalistic or male-driven approach to decision making within a household. So in the UK, maybe in the US as well, there's more of a sense that a woman's choice or access to contraception is for her to make as an independent person. Mm-hmm. In Ghana, this is much more considered a family or even a community decision. So the husband, maybe the mother-in-law as well, would expect to have quite significant say over what and when type of access someone might have. And so discovering this, and also discovering the ways in which contraception relates to just people's very different day-to-day experiences. And there are all sorts of more technical or mundane ways in which people relate to the methods that they use in just very different ways. Not the most fun example, but to have small amounts of bleeding from use of a contraceptive method in everyday life in a higher income country is an inconvenience, but is maybe not a massive hindrance. But in the predominantly Islamic communities that we were working in, it's considered a taboo for a woman to be bleeding around prayer and around the preparation of food. And so this goes from being a practical inconvenience to a kind of rupture of the family dynamic in a way that a mother is not able to fulfill basically her family obligations and her role within the family because of this same experience. And so the experience of the same thing can be very vastly different across different places. And there are just lots of different small, seemingly mundane examples of this that have a very large impact on what it looks like to actually deliver work that really is useful to people.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I've studied the Bible a ton, and, it talks about, and I don't know if this translates to modern times, if women are bleeding, then they're unclean and separated for a while. And that's in the Old Testament. And then obviously that changes. But just from research that I've done, or from other nonprofits that are providing things specifically for the menstrual cycle, right? The amount that it takes away from the family, whether that's cooking or household chores or going to access water, or for kids being able to access education, they have to stay home during those cycles if they don't have the proper resources. And so I think it's just such an important thing, because it really helps uplift the whole community when you are empowering the women.
Yes, absolutely.
So you have been open about your experience of then having to shut down this nonprofit. So can you walk us through what led that decision and what you took away from it?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a very difficult decision for myself and for Sarah, my co-founder. We were very motivated about the idea of the value of the work, that for women who want to avoid having a pregnancy, the ability to do this is very profound. That if they don't want to have an additional child, avoiding this and avoiding the potential complications of a pregnancy in a lower resource health context, using facilities and hospitals where the standard of care is lower, avoiding this has very far-reaching effects on their income, their well-being, their general experience of their ability to go and live their life as they would like to. But a lot of this value is tied to the impact of taking up contraception on your likelihood of getting pregnant. There's not a separate sphere of value from using contraception. Most of the time, people find it to minor or more major degrees inconvenience in terms of the side effects or other consequences of needing to use a method. Our work focused on this post-birth period, so this first year after birth, where there is a substantial drop in the percentage of women in the areas we were working who use contraceptive methods. So there's just a lot fewer women who are using contraceptive methods in this period. So on the surface, increasing the rates of family planning use in this period should be really valuable. It means that more of these women can avoid having a second pregnancy very close to a first one, avoid the health complications of this, and have the much broader benefits in terms of their income, in terms of their well-being, in terms of their ability to live their life as they would like to. It gets a little technical, but there are two main reasons that ultimately that impact doesn't translate. So actually a woman using contraception in this period where she otherwise might not have, doesn't have much of a effect on her likelihood of getting pregnant. And so if it's not shifting her likelihood of getting pregnant particularly, then it's not having much benefit. So we can go in with the idea of providing more access to contraception in this period is going to be really useful. But if it's not actually translating to real benefits in people's lives, the work's not particularly worth doing. It costs a lot of money. It requires a lot of time. It has lots of inputs. And if it's not producing real results in terms of people's actual experience of their lives, then it's not worth doing particularly. And so this is ultimately the experience that we had is from some of the data that we collected about our programming and a lot of engagement with better understanding the cultural context of the place that we were working, that the benefits of taking up contraception in this period for a lot of these women is actually pretty low. And so the value of our work was pretty low. We had the funding to go and continue doing this for another 6, 12, 18 months. But it didn't feel worthwhile. My heart, I think Sarah's heart was not in it to deliver a program that we were increasingly unsure was having a meaningful end effect on people's lives. Mm-hmm. It's easy to stand there and try and make a case that, we might be increasing the number of women who are using contraception and go and tell people who might donate to us that this thing is working. But we had a sense that on a deeper level, the program and the work that we were doing was not having the effect that we had set out for. And ultimately, the people who had donated to us and funded our work had hoped for.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. You really taking, and that's so brave of you to really look at the cultural context, look at the impact, and not try to skew the data or what you were seeing to continue to get funding, right? You were really transparent and honest with yourself, and that takes a level of courage to say, hey, we set out to do this thing, and it's not having the results that we want, and that's okay. But we need to have that courageous conversation of whether we continue the way we're doing or really understand the cultural context in which we're working and tell our funders what is really going on. And I think that is the bravest thing that you could do. When you're talking about your work right now is serving as an incubator for nonprofits or social impact, what are the key characteristics that newer nonprofits need to embody, or what do they need to know as founders to set themselves up for success?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think one of these things relates to this idea. So we take very seriously, and it's very easy to see from my perspective, involved in an incubator where we launch lots of different organizations, that the money that is spent on a certain program could be spent elsewhere. There are many different programs that feel deserving of funding. And so if you ultimately do not have the desired impact in delivering a certain program, that money could be spent elsewhere. And so the reason to be very honest and transparent about the value that you are producing is because there are other ways in which we can help other people. It might be different people, it might be working on a different problem, but there are lots of different ways in which we can try and help people, and we shouldn't spend money on things that we have a sense are not working. And so I think one of the things that we really prioritize and encourage in our founders is a really clear-minded focus on this end impact. Are you really making the difference that you set out to in the lives of the people that you're trying to serve? And being willing to view the charities that they start maybe in a slightly for-profit lens as like a startup. So it's okay if it fails. It's not a bad thing if you set out to do this project and the program that you set out didn't have the effect that you wanted it to. That doesn't mean that you, by default, did a bad job. Some of these ideas are a little more speculative because we believe they'll be very high value if they work. in these ways of engaging in very different contexts, there are unexpected reasons sometimes why something that everyone at the beginning thought would work, it doesn't turn out. And so the only way to really understand that is that you have people who run these projects who are really committed to being honest about, is this thing working the way that we wanted it to, and that they collect data that actually is helpful for this. So to take the example of the charity that I set up, it would have been very easy for us to just engage with data about the number of mothers who were taking up contraception. And we could have gone and taken that to funders. We could have gone and communicated that and said, hey, look, our program's amazing. It's increasing the number of mothers. But that's not, as we've chatted about, that's not the real value of that work. And so measuring the, as I would put it, like the end line impact, the thing that comes at the end in terms of, are you saving lives? Are you improving mental health? Are you all sorts of different things? But the thing at the end that is actually the value in someone's life, are you having the effect on that you set out to? And are you measuring that with how you approach considering if your program is a success?
So can you get a little bit more granular and just give another example of, because obviously people's missions could be like end hunger, to end homelessness, to lift people out of poverty, to end the mental health crisis that's happening in the US and across the world. Because those are big, broad impacts. And or Charity Water always says clean water for all, or whatever their mission is, but it's like clean water by this lifetime. And those are really big goals. So how do you, and they're great goals, they're things that people should reach for, right? But how do you break it down into that real impact in which it is a little bit more tangible, not only for you to know that you're moving the needle towards that mission, but also to be able to pitch it to donors saying, hey, this is the realistic impact? Because I had someone on the podcast early on talk about like the power of one, because it's really hard for people to say, hey, I can give $100, but how is that going to affect 1,000 people or 1,000,000 people, right? My $100 is only going to make so much. But if you say, I'm going to impact one person with my $100, you feel like you're going to make more of an impact, right? So how do you break it down to really knowing how to define what that impact is, and then how you're going to hold yourself accountable and be honest about how you're moving the needle towards that impact?
Yeah. So maybe to take a couple of examples. One is something around education. So this is another, say, of these kind of big driving problems that someone might want to solve. We want to increase access to education right across the world so that everyone has access to at least a basic level of education. And a lot of work is done in this space. And something that's like being recognized more recently is some of this work is not, in a similar way that we've been talking about, not having the impact that people had hoped. So a lot of work is being done on getting kids to attend school. So increasing school attendance in developing countries, in lower income countries. And this has been quite successful in increasing attendances at schools. But going to school doesn't guarantee learning, and it doesn't guarantee the value of learning. If we say that maybe education is useful in part, there are lots and lots of reasons, but in part in terms of increasing someone's job opportunities, so the income that they might be able to earn in later life. And even more just bluntly or simply, that going to school is useful because you learn things. Your knowledge, your ability to read and write actually increases. And so a sobering kind of sad statistic more recently is that we've increased school attendance quite substantially, but the ability of kids to read and write at a basic level in many countries has not increased. And there are many reasons why this might be the case. I think some of the more accepted reasons or more likely reasons around the quality of teaching. So you can stick lots of kids in a classroom, but if they're not getting good information, then they're not going to learn. Just the simple fact of being in a classroom isn't the only thing that you need to learn. There are more things that have to go in for you to learn. And so in this way, understanding that if we want to help kids learn, we need to make sure that we're actually measuring that they're learning. And if we just measure that they go to school, we can assume that them going to school means that they're going to learn more. But we might be wrong about that assumption. And so ultimately, it's having that assessment of what is the real value of the work that you're doing. And then you can go and communicate that as well to your donors, as you say. So it is nice, but maybe also a bit more superficial, unclear of being, okay, I can spend $20 and I can pay for a kid to go to school for a year. And I don't actually have any real sense of how valuable that is. But it's maybe the example of I can pay $20 or maybe it's $40 because it's a little bit harder to do. And a 10-year-old who can't read or write at a basic level, can't read a simple sentence in their language, can now read. I get a much better sense of actually how useful that is. You could go further and say, okay, we can model or we can predict how useful that learning is for increasing someone's economic opportunities. So if they learn at a higher level, if they go up an age grade or something in their education experience, that means they're likely to earn a few thousand more, however many thousand more dollars per year in later life, and the benefits of that. But I think there's value on both sides there in terms of really understanding, is your program delivering value? And then also to donors or funders or anyone else who's engaging with your work, connecting your work to something that feels more tangible, more clear on how that is actually really providing value in people's lives.
Yeah, and I can totally understand that. And I have a story around, I guess in kindergarten, I didn't learn how to read. And so all the other teachers were teaching, but my teacher didn't. And we had to go to summer school to be able to graduate to first grade. So yes, I can relate to that of going to school every single day, but not being provided the education. And also, at least in the US, your level of reading in fourth grade predicts your future.
Right.
And so they really use that as a metric of whether that's earning more, if you're going to graduate from high school. And so I think measuring all of those metrics above just school attendance, and obviously that is important, but what is the quality of learning within that environment that is going to be able to help people meet the goals that they need to? Hey there, podcast family. If you're like me and deeply committed to improving your leadership skills and fostering better connections with your team, I've got something truly amazing to share with you. I'm proud to introduce the EMC Masterclass, something I talk about often as a certified trainer. It's an incredible program developed by the renowned Dr. Lola Gershfeld, an organizational psychologist and corporate emotional connection expert. You might remember her from a podcast episode where she shared invaluable insights into the world of emotional connection. Dr. Gershfeld's EMC Leaders courses are designed for anyone working with people, whether you're a manager, supervisor, team leader, educator, coach, mentor, or a team member. This program is truly for everyone looking to enhance their communication and collaboration skills to raise more revenue for their mission. Now, let me tell you why the EMC Masterclass is a game changer. Dr. Gershfeld's groundbreaking emotional connection process has been integrated into top universities' curriculum and recognized by international organizations like ICF, HRCI, and SHRM. Humans are wired to seek emotional safety, and when we feel safe, we're more likely to take risks, share innovative ideas, and collaborate effectively. The EMC process is the catalyst for creating that emotional safety within your team. The virtual EMC Masterclass consists of 8 modules with 4 hours of expertly recorded material, 13 quizzes to reinforce your learning, and a workbook filled with activities for offline practice and something I still refer to daily. Ready to become an emotional connection master? Dr. Gershfeld is offering an exclusive detail for our podcast listeners. Use the code LEADWITHHEART to enjoy a generous 10% discount on the EMC Masterclass. Head over to emcleaders.com and enroll in the EMC Masterclass today.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's just trying to ask that question of what is it about my program that really drives value in people's lives? Everyone's measuring the work that they do in some kind of way. Everyone's trying to understand, is what I've built, is what I'm delivering, providing value, but making sure that you are in this way measuring the right thing, measuring what really matters in delivering benefits and change in people's lives.
Yeah, definitely. And my last in-house role was as Director of Development at an organization here in Orange County that was serving children experiencing hunger and homelessness. And when we were handing out food, and our numbers are really small compared to the local food bank, but we were also offering more programming. And so it wasn't about the quantity of people we were serving. It was really about the quality of service. And what you're saying is that life change. Like, we weren't just giving out food. That was the first step to be able to engage with these individuals. So then we could provide education. And there was so much more data we had to unpack to be able to truly tell our story of the impact and how we were going to meet our mission and serve the people. And what does that story look like around that?
Yeah, completely. That makes sense. And so, again, in a similar way, providing food is useful and valuable, but it's not the full picture. What really matters is how that, along with other aspects, the education is a good example, is changing people's lives for the better. And so that actually providing more food on the surface seems, if you're providing more meals, you must be doing more. You must be having more impact on people's lives. It's often not nearly as simple. And there are lots of examples like this, as you say, with the program that you ran, when you are targeting the problem that really matters in different ways. You might actually be having a lot more impact on what really matters, but it might be less obvious or less visible.
Yeah, definitely. And at Ambitious Impact, you're constantly scouting potential nonprofit founders. What are some of the surprising traits you found in successful founders, and how do they challenge traditional ideas of quote unquote qualified leadership?
Right. I think one of the most obvious is that you don't need to have particular experience or be of a particular age or background to be an excellent nonprofit founder. One of the founders of an organization called Family Empowerment Media, we set this organization up in 2021, and they dropped out of university to found this. So they were, I think, 21 at the time, maybe 22, very little professional experience and no particular background in the area of work that they worked on. I think one of the maybe cliched but most important things that we see is just the sheer desire, grit, perseverance in trying to solve a problem, really being irrepressible in the approach. And sometimes I think people who have less experience in an area, or maybe even are a little younger and less world weary, have had less setbacks, have a little more of that irrepressibility. They just will not stop in figuring out how to solve a problem and can also be very creative. I think one of the things that is important for the organizations that we launch and what we look for in founders is there are a lot of charities out in the world doing great things. And the reason that we set up new charities is not just to set up another organization that does the same thing as 10 or 20 or 50 organizations already do. It's to experiment, to innovate, to find new solutions that might be able to solve problems that are hard to solve currently, or find more effective ways of solving existing problems, so that the organization itself can go and have a lot of impact in people's lives, but also that those lessons and those new approaches can be shared, that like other organizations can go and adopt some of these ideas that get tested out by our organizations and really run with these and use them to improve their own programs.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And when I started my nonprofit, I was 24, and I write about this in my book. So I didn't know what a nonprofit was. Like, I was literally transported to Malawi, Africa to start making peanut butter. And I think, like you said, the less experience helped me see, because now I'm like 13, 14 years in, and sometimes I'm a little jaded. But back then it was like I had the drive and the resourcefulness and like the passion and the energy to do whatever it takes to make this nonprofit happen. And it still stands today and is very successful. But yeah, I think that idea of sometimes less experience gives you more opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is just that there can be surprising solutions to problems that seem very hard to solve or even insurmountable. Having less experience and that sheer belief that you will solve the problem can go a long way.
Definitely. So for those who feel pulled to start something meaningful, but maybe hesitating, what advice would you give them to help take that first step towards impact?
I think the advice I would give is to start small, but start with something. I think it can seem very, maybe I'm talking about organizations that work in an entirely different place, work on these very large problems, and it can seem a very long way to make the leap to doing that work. But that actually it is very possible to start with solving a problem that is maybe closer to home, but to take real action and to develop something, to identify something that is closer to your experience or more in your community or something like this, and to try out this approach of maybe being, as we would call it, like a charity entrepreneur, to set out to genuinely help people and have the focus on helping people, but with this for-profit business approach of setting up an organization or a program or a product that you think can help people and going and just testing this on a really small scale. And some of the people that we have on our program have often done this in small ways, where they've run small projects that haven't gone and transformed the world in themselves, but the person has really done something that is still meaningful, has learned a lot, and is in a position now to maybe go and run something at a much larger scale. And I think it is sad, but like too easy to end up in the position of, oh, that sounds really worth doing. I would love to do that. But maybe when I've done this additional training, maybe when I've had this extra job role, when I've done something that is not quite where I'm at. And I think there is no better time than the present to go and actually to start trying to make a real difference in people's lives. And this is what I spend my time encouraging people with our program. Lots of people who think about applying to our incubation program, there's no prerequisites for applying. We don't ask for any degrees or any prior work experience, anything like this. But lots of people feel underqualified. And the main thing I end up telling people is just do it. Just have a go and just see where you get. And I think it's too easy to feel like you need to have more training, have more experience relative to finding something that you can start on right now and just having a go, making a start.
Yeah, sometimes that's the hardest thing, right? We have to have all of our ducks in a row and all of this to start. The hardest part is to start. And so if you have come to the end of this episode, this is our encouragement to you to just get going, try it out. And if you want to learn more about the work that you do, where can they find you?
We have two websites. We have ambitiousimpact.com for our broader work. And then for the Charity Entrepreneurship, this Charity Incubator program that we run, there is charityentrepreneurship.com. But if you search either of these names, Ambitious Impact or Charity Entrepreneurship in Google, you will very easily find us and the programs that we run. And yeah, somewhere on there, my little face is one of the team members.
We will make sure to link to all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Ben, for being on the podcast.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
If you have valued these stories or learned something from what you've heard, please share this podcast episode or follow me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your support, and together we can build a better community and world.